Hello, my name is Dr. Logan Chopik, and I'm excited to be presenting here on Slide School today. The topic I'm going to be presenting on is the physics of brass instruments. All right, so I guess you're probably all wondering, why should I care about this? And it does seem kind of ridiculous at first because we've been playing our instruments for a long time with success, without really knowing how exactly it works, perhaps. Um, it's obviously not necessary to, to play to know how it all works, but um, I feel like we definitely all have assumptions anyways about how it works, and when we're in those moments of um, uncertainty, or we're in the practice room and we're having some trouble. Maybe we're having trouble with a high note, or we're having trouble with endurance, or having trouble with articulation, getting a clear start on the sound. It's in those moments that we go to the drawing board and we come up with solutions, and we're using what we know about how our instruments work to come up with solutions. As long as if we're thinking for ourselves, we're not just doing what our teacher tells us to do. So when you're critically thinking and you're trying to come up with solutions, you're referencing your ideas about how things work on a brass instrument, whether or not those assumptions are based in reality or not. So it's kind of like, I feel like it's something that would be really helpful if you're kind of anywhere from like college level to professional, to really kind of start digging in. Okay, well, are my practice strategies really helping? Do they make sense with, how what we know about the instrument? Um, yeah, so where do our assumptions come from? I think a lot of them are common sense, just common sense ideas. A lot of them are also passed down from teachers, or from teachers, or teachers' teachers, or our teachers' teachers' teachers. So there's a lot of secondhand information going around. Um, and yeah, just a lot of teachers saying things, um, and also a lot of sensations that we have when we're playing. I think they kind of inform us, and also the sensations that our teachers have when they play. They may be trying to describe how it feels when they play a certain way, and so they kind of tell you how it feels, and then you try to reverse engineer that feeling. Like, um, it doesn't really work that way. So yeah, so I think it's a pretty important topic, and it's certainly something that would have helped me. I wish someone had given me this talk back in 2010 or something. Okay, so one of the reasons that I think it's kind of important, especially for brass instruments, to unveil the mystery, is because it is so mysterious. Um, uh, it's actually, this is a funny thing. I learned in my doctorate degree that there was a period of time hundreds of years ago where um, trumpet playing was a well-kept guild secret, and they did that to inflate their salaries. So it was kind of like you had to they were limiting the number of trumpet players that were available for these courts, so they became very highly valued. But it's kind of funny that you could keep a secret like that. I don't know. It's like, if you're playing violin, it's not really a secret how it works, but somehow the trumpet, because it's so invisible, that's the next point, is that just the mechanism is invisible to observers, unlike piano and violin. So it's not obvious what's going on. And even if you have cameras, like there's been, Pete Elvson had a camera placed in his mouthpiece, and you're watching the lips, but that still doesn't capture the whole mechanism that's going on, because even with cameras inside, it's invisible. And then the other thing is, yeah, players experience good and bad days, and they don't always know why. So there's a lot of superstitions that arise in people's playing. I remember, like in college, I had a beer and then went and practiced, and it went really great. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll try drinking a beer before every practice. And that's not good. Yeah. Okay, so in physics and philosophy, there's an idea called first principles, and this is something I first heard about when I was studying Elon Musk back when he was first sort of starting the electric car revolution, and he kept mentioning in these interviews, people like asking him, "Well, how do we become like a great engineer like you?" And he said, "Well, I just always have a first principles approach." And I didn't know what that meant, so I looked it up, and it is um, a basic proposition or assumption that cannot be deduced from any other proposition or assumption. Or in physics and other sciences, theoretical work is said to be from first principles if it starts directly at the level of established science and does not make assumptions. And so I thought, well, geez, I wonder if that could be applied to brass playing. Is there um, and and so I went for it. I kind of, well, what do I really know about brass playing that's not just something my teacher told me, or not something that I'm just assuming because it feels a certain way, but like really, how does this thing actually work? Um, so at the most basic level, I think we ought to start just with like defining understanding what is sound, and what is resonance, and then learning how the instruments work. And then we can talk about, maybe my own past assumptions and how they were changed and how that changed the way that I practice and the way that I play. So, here we'll start with the basics of sound. This is from Crash Course, this like PBS program. It'll be quick.
Sound, you'll recall, is a wave, a longitudinal wave. This means that the medium that the wave travels through oscillates, or moves back and forth in the same direction that the wave is moving. But string, wind and brass instruments use a special kind of wave.
So that's just they just quickly kind of reviewed this from a previous video, but so sound is longitudinal waves. It's not like if you make a wave with a jump rope just by pulling it up and down, you get this kind of wave pattern. And in sound, it's actually kind of slinky waves. And the what the wave is air density, or like air displacement. So you'll have like sort of denser pockets of air, and followed by like less dense, followed by dense, followed by less dense. So it's that pressure wave. That's what sound is.
They're standing waves. A standing wave is a wave that looks like it isn't moving. Its amplitude may change, but it isn't travelling anywhere. Standing waves are the result of two other things waves do, both of which we've talked about before: reflection and interference. Reflection is what happens when a wave reaches the end of a path and then moves back along the same path. That's what happens when you send a pulse down a fixed rope. It reaches the end and then comes right back. When we send a continuous wave down a rope, that's when interference comes into play. The wave reaches the end of the rope and is reflected, but there are more peaks on the way. As the peaks pass each other, they interfere with one another, changing their sizes. Usually,
So yeah, so for standing waves to happen, you have to have this reflection property, where yeah, so the wave comes in and then reflects, and on the way back, it it is reflecting it just the right way, so that you get continuous peaks and troughs of the wave. So the places of the highest air displacement and the places of lowest air displacement, those spots stay the same, and then that's yeah, a standing wave.
you end up with crests and troughs that are different sizes and various distances apart. But at certain frequencies, the reflective waves interfere in such a way that you end up with a wave that seems to stay perfectly still, with only its amplitude changing. That's a standing wave, and it can happen both in strings and in the air in pipes. And that's what makes music. Standing waves with different frequencies correspond to different musical notes. Now, in order to understand how standing waves operate, you should get to know their anatomy. The points of a standing
Yeah, so basically a note is a standing wave. So, I guess versus, if you hear noise, like that's an air density wave that isn't a standing wave, so you're not getting a tone. Um, so yeah, so notes are standing waves.
Wave that don't oscillate are called nodes, and the point at maximum height of the peaks are antinodes. And here's something cool. If you look at a string on a stringed instrument as it's creating a sound wave, you can actually see where the nodes and antinodes are. The standing waves create peaks along the string, and between those peaks there are points that just stay still. So the peaks are the antinodes and the points that don't oscillate are nodes. And if one or both of the string ends are fixed, then each fixed end is a node too, because it's stuck in place. Now, in a pipe, the standing waves are made of air molecules moving back and forth. But the areas where molecules oscillate the most, including those near any open ends of the pipe, form the peaks and therefore the antinodes. And between those peaks, as well as any closed ends of the pipe, are areas where molecules don't move at all. Those are the nodes. Generally, musicians make their music using the frequencies of these standing waves. But the nature of these waves depends a lot on what the ends of the string or pipe look like. Remember how a wave travelling down a rope gets reflected differently, depending on whether the end of the rope is fixed or loose. A fixed end will invert the wave, turning crests into troughs and vice versa, while a loose end will just reflect it without inverting it. The same thing holds true for air in a pipe. A closed end will invert the wave, while an open end won't. So the properties of a standing wave will be a little different depending on whether it's made with a string with two ends fixed, or a pipe with two ends open, or a string or a pipe with one end fixed and the other open. A string with two fixed ends.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of nuance there. And then here we'll describe just some words that we already kind of talk about in the business with, fundamentals, overtones.
Waves that you can have too. These are known as overtones. Overtones build on the fundamental incrementally. Each overtone adds a node and an antinode. So each of these overtones is related to the fundamental wave, and all of the overtones are related to each other. Together, the fundamental wave and the overtones make up what are known as harmonics. The fundamental is the first harmonic, and the overtones are higher numbered harmonics. With each node and antinode pair that's added to the standing wave, the number of the harmonic goes up. Second harmonic, third harmonic, and so on. Now, physicists sometimes express harmonics in terms of wavelength. For example, for a string with two fixed ends, you'll notice that the fundamental covers exactly half a wavelength. A full wavelength of the wave would span two peaks, a crest and a trough, but the fundamental spans exactly one peak, which is half the wavelength. So, for the fundamental of a string with two fixed ends, the length of the string is equal to half a wavelength. The second simplest standing wave you can have on a string with two fixed ends has three nodes, one at each end and one in the middle, plus two antinodes between the nodes. It's called the second harmonic, and the string holds exactly one wavelength. You can probably guess what the third harmonic looks like. It has four nodes and three antinodes, and the string holds 1.5 or 3/2 wavelengths. You may have started to notice a pattern.
Yeah, so basically, the higher you go up in the overtone series, the more the more frequent are the nodes and antinodes. So, and there's a little bit of nuance here with the brass instruments, because I believe it's like every other one. You're like it's yeah. There's something about the open end of the pipe is you're not able to get every single overtone. You can only get like every other one. But yeah, so that's kind of the basics of sound resonance. What are notes? They're standing waves, and higher notes are just more of those, more of those more frequent antinodes and nodes. So, and those are harmonics. And so here's some cool. I got a few visualizations of resonance for you. So this is called a Rubens tube, and it is a flammable gas-filled pipe with holes in the top. And on one end it's closed, and the other end has a like rubber membrane that they're going to be inputting tones into with a tone generator. And you'll see as they dial through, they basically glissando up through all the different tones, that sometimes there's no disturbance in the flames, and then it gets to certain notes and it's like zing, and there, you'll see there'll be a very distinct pattern, and those are the resonant frequencies of that tube, and you'll be able to see them because of the flames. So there's a standing wave. And there's no wave.
So hopefully you can see the result of the standing wave in the flames. So these points are the nodes, here and here. These are the antinodes. So these points, the nodes where the flames are small, those are the points where the pressure isn't varying very much at that point. The tall flames, those are the antinodes. Those are the points where the pressure is varying a lot at that point. And let's see if we can find some higher ones. I swept through a few there. Let's see what we've got.
So you can see this high note has quite a lot of, the frequency is high. That's very high. So high that the flames can't even really represent all the peaks and troughs. As it goes down, there becomes less and less frequent nodes and antinodes.
And that is the Rubens tube. So what's all this got to do with...
Okay, so that's one visualization. Let's go to the next one. This is a Kunz tube, and it's kind of the same deal, except instead of flames, there are little styrofoam balls inside this one. And what I like about this is it kind of shows when those resonant frequencies are hit, these balls like levitate, which is like, it's pretty neat that sound can levitate things. Sound is really powerful. Resonance is really powerful. Some slow motion. So if, imagine what a standing wave could do to, say, lips in the mouthpiece. You see it going in and out of resonance. So now it has resonance. There's standing wave now. Oh, yeah. So when it's just flat, there's no standing wave. There's no effect on the balls, but those standing waves happen. And it's like all of a sudden it activates. Okay, and to show you further how powerful resonance can be, this is a famous bridge in Washington called the Tacoma Bridge.
Tacoma Bridge, Washington, opened only a few months ago, was built at a cost of over $6 million. But misfortune overtakes the great structure. These are some of the most amazing pictures ever recorded by a newsreel. The actual collapse of the world's third largest suspension bridge.
So that's a standing wave. You've got in between the two pillars of the suspension bridge, there's a fundamental frequency happening, or I guess it maybe be the second harmonic. It's a full wavelength. So
Only a 35-mile-an-hour wind is blowing, but this apparently sets up a rhythmic swinging of the bridge, which increases with each swing. Finally, the swinging road and the suspension cables give way and plunge into the water below. Fortunately, the only casualties were a car stalled on the bridge and a dog.
Yeah, so first of all, I find it amazing that the bridge lasted that long. Um, that's a lot of bending for like asphalt and concrete and stuff. Um, but yeah, it's 35-mile-hour wind causing like tons and tons and tons of these heavy materials to swing and move like that. That's incredible. So what's happening there is the wind was it was resonating the bridge. It has just right frequency. Um, so now I think they have to build bridges. They really don't want them to resonate. So you have to kind of, and I think this may be true also of buildings the way they're designed for earthquakes. You don't want them resonating because then they'll go nuts and break. Okay, there we go. This is a really great one. This is a wave pool, and they have these paddles on the side of the pool that are connected to a computer that send waves through the water at the exact frequency of their choosing, and um, you can cause standing waves in the water, which you'll see now. So here's the waves coming in from one side, one corner, and you can see they're just now hitting the end. They're going to reflect back towards the waves, and now the reflected waves and ejected waves are mixing. You see one side of the pool's got standing waves, and the other side is still yet to reach the standing wave level. And now it's starting to just look like an alien spaceship is causing the pool to do that. That's a standing wave in water. Looks totally unnatural and weird. But that's the phenomenon that we're harnessing when we play brass instrument. The power of the water doing that weird thing and the Tacoma Bridge collapsing and the styrofoam balls floating and the flames, getting suppressed or, larger. That's kind of, those are all standing waves. That's what we're trying to do when we play tones. Um, okay. And just for fun, this isn't really anything to do with resonance, but just kind of as a little bonus treat, here's a trumpet bell shock wave. Shock waves are faster than the speed of sound waves. And when you play very loud on a brass instrument, you actually get a shock wave. And with this special type of photography, you can capture disturbances in the air or differences in the air. So you can actually see those shock waves, and then you can see the reflection of the waves coming back as they hit various objects. The reflections are a little more subtle. And yeah, this is slowed down like 2,500 times. Anyway, I thought that was kind of a cool little gem. Yeah, so what we kind of know about the physics of brass instruments started all the way back in 1760 with these famous physicists, Bernoulli, Lagrange. Those are really big names in science. Um, and then this Horn equation was rediscovered 1838 by George Green while he was investigating erosion caused by waves in the new canal systems of England. And I think that's pretty cool that, I guess just the Horn equation is kind of like it describes any sort of uh, fluid going in a shape, an expanding shape. So kind of think of a bell. And so I guess there must have been a canal that had that shape, and it was eroding in a very strange way. And so I said, well, this isn't what's going on here. And then 1876, someone came up for it independently, and then or the early 20th century, they started using it for like submarine sonar detection. The phonograph was happening, radio speakers, so it started becoming pretty useful. Um, um, A lot of my knowledge about the physics of brass instruments has come from this article by Arthur Benade from 1973, which is, it's kind of amazing how long we've known about this stuff. And yet it seems that no one really has mentioned it to me. Okay, so I'll just kind of read these quotes. In a musical horn, the flare of the bell must be designed to trap energy inside the horn, giving strongly marked standing waves at precisely defined frequencies. So I don't know, like for some reason when I was younger, it just seemed obvious, like common sense, like the bell is there to kind of like release energy, but they're talking about, okay, it actually needs to trap energy. And why does it need to trap energy? It's because you need to create standing waves in the air column of the brass instrument. So in order to do that, the bell has to actually reflect waves back to the player. Without that, you don't have standing waves. So, we all know about, oh, the horn is kind of has a lot of resistance, or the horn is stuffy. I mean, that's kind of what we're feeling when you blow into an instrument and you feel that kind of pushback. That is the bell. I mean, it's also the length of the tube, but it's the bell is kind of designed to trap energy. The next one, regions where the horn function is large can form a barrier to the transmission of waves and can therefore reduce the escape of energy from within a horn to the outside. So basically, only a certain selection of waves can sort of exit the system because of the horn function. Okay, next one. So they developed an experiment. Let us begin by imagining a laboratory experiment in which the horn is excited not by the air from the player's lips and lungs, but rather by an oscillatory flow of air being pumped in and out of the mouthpiece through a fine capillary by a high-speed pump. So just imagine a pump connected to a mouthpiece. The small oscillatory flow disturbance in the mouthpiece gives rise to a pressure wave that ultimately reaches the flaring part of the bell. So a pressure wave travels from the mouthpiece to the bell. As the wave travels down the length of the bore of the horn, some of its energy is dissipated by friction and the transfer of heat to the walls of the instrument. In the flaring part of the bell, a substantial fraction of the acoustic wave is reflected back toward the mouthpiece, while the remainder penetrates the horn function barrier and is radiated out into the surrounding space. The wave that is reflected back down the bore of the horn combines with newly injected waves to produce a standing wave. So pressure waves come in the mouthpiece, reaches the bell, comes back, and mixes and creates a standing wave. That's how the instrument works. The next one, if the round trip time that the wave takes to go from the mouthpiece to the bell and back to the mouthpiece is equal to half the repetition time of the original stimulus or to any odd multiple of the repetition time, a standing wave of considerable pressure can build up and result in a large disturbance in the mouthpiece. So at intermediate frequencies of excitation, the return wave tends to cancel the influence of the injected wave. In other words, depending on the precise interaction between the injected wave and the reflected wave, the pressure disturbance inside the mouthpiece can be large or small. So yeah, basically, the standing waves are causing large disturbances in the mouthpiece. So what would a disturbance in the mouthpiece be like for a player? Well, it'd probably feel like your lips are vibrating. So yeah, that's kind of where that disturbance is what causes the lips to vibrate. Last one, the shape of the horn controls the natural frequencies associated with the various impedance maxima and minima by determining the penetration of the standing waves into the bell. The shape also controls the amount of wave energy that leaks out of the horn into the surrounding space. And I like this last quote because it's kind of framing the system of the instrument as something that is containing energy, and that the waves that come out are like leakages, which I just thought that's kind of neat. Um, because I think so often we don't really think of the like a brass. We think of it something that you want to blow through. You don't want resistance. You just want to blow through. But we're actually relying on that resistance, and we're harnessing that reflective property. And that's kind of why, like if you can play long tones. If you just blow your air through a trombone without playing a tone, then your air depletes very quickly. But you could hold a long tone for 4 bars of 4/4 at 60 beats per minute. So when you're resonating, you're getting that recycling of energy, and it holds the air in. Okay, so now we know what is sound. It's longitudinal waves, uh, air density waves. What is a tone? What is a note? A musical note. A musical note is a standing wave. What is a standing wave? A standing wave is an air density wave that reflects and then combines with the injected waves to form peaks and troughs that don't move, they stand still. And resonance is uh, when those standing waves occur. Um, yeah, and and brass instruments work by um, reflecting the injected waves, pressure waves from a player back to the player, and combining with the continually injected waves. So that's how the instrument works, and that standing wave causes the lips to vibrate sympathetically with the standing wave. Okay, and here you can see, here's a little diagram of on the left side we've got a sort of a basic brass instrument, um, cup, backbore, lead pipe, main tube, and bell. And you can see within that, like next to it, we've got the fundamental, and then we've got the second harmonic, or I guess the third harmonic, and then it just keeps going. And you'll notice as the frequencies get higher, or the frequencies become more frequent, they extend further and further out the bell. And at something Arthur Benet talks about in his article is that the higher the frequency, the less able the bell is to reflect waves. So it becomes they kind of penetrate out into the space further. Okay, so now is a good time, so we have our first principles kind of education about how our instruments work. We know what sound is, we know what standing waves are, we know what resonance is, we know how the brass instruments function. So how should we proceed with our practicing? Um, so I think there's some pretty obvious ones that come to mind for me, which is this turns the buzzing concept completely on its head. Now, when I say buzzing, I'm really talking about like free buzzing or the visualizer or like just a mouthpiece. As soon as if I had a mouthpiece and I attached a lead pipe to it, or just like a long tube, then it becomes a different thing. But yeah, just the mouthpiece. So this is something that I did for years. I was told, it would help my high range, it would help my tone, whatever. So I did it kind of religiously, and never really got better doing it. And if anything, got more tight. So I know there's definitely there's been a pushback against buzzing lately, and I am on board with that, because in the physics view of it, what is causing the note to occur? What is causing the lips to vibrate? Is it muscular pressure of squeezing down on your lips? No, we know it's actually the standing wave that's in the air. The air column has become a standing wave, and that's causing a disturbance inside the cup of the mouthpiece. And so the lips are like riding the wave of the air column. So this is the air column. Our lips are kind of like riding that disturbance. Yeah. Um, so when we practice buzzing, um, we're not we're not practicing what it's like to play the instrument. A lot of people will say, I've heard so many times, if you can buzz it, you can play it, or um, uh, the the trombone is just an amplifier of what's happening in the mouthpiece. Um, and that's like completely false. It's it's not an amplifier at all. An amplifier would mean just making louder the things that happen in a mouthpiece. And when you buzz the mouthpiece, it sounds bad. And when you play a trombone, it sounds good. And the reason is because there's different physics happening there. So, and when you're practicing buzzing, you're doing a lot of, the lips are coming together. You have to sort of pinch the lips together. But when you're resonating an air column, when you're trying to inject waves, pressure waves that reach the bell and return and mix with those waves, you're having to be influencing the air column. So this is an air column, and I've got my buzzing. If I'm buzzing, I'm not really getting not, my influence isn't really getting into the air column. But if I you know basically the function of the embouchure is completely different for buzzing as it is for trying to resonate. So if I block this straw, then it kind of becomes a reflective bell. So when I inject waves in here, they're gonna get reflected back at me, and I can get a resonating sound. I can get a standing wave. That's the same thing as playing a brass instrument, that reflective standing wave. So that's kind of my embouchure for that. That's an embouchure that it allows me to. I mean, I'm not doing an embouchure. I'm just saying, I'm trying to make the straw resonate, and in doing so, my mouth does that. Whereas if I try to buzz a tone, you know, it's closed off. So it's a different. Yeah, and I'm proud I'm not good at buzzing because I don't do it. Um, yeah, so that's I think the big one of the big takeaways. Another one is the kind of overblowing. So a lot of people that I see that I work with, they come in and they're just like they're ready to blow a house down. Um, they're taking a big breath. I'm just trying to move a lot of air, and I like to think about that wave pool, the resonating wave pool that I showed you. When the pool, before they were sending waves into it, it was a very pristine, placid, unmoving body of water, right? Um, they send waves in, and you can see them very clearly. They're very like it's very clean. Imagine if they had jacuzzi jets on, and then try to send waves in. The jacuzzi jets would probably interfere with the waves, and you also wouldn't be able to see like when the standing waves would like the reflected waves would probably mix, and it would just sort of be not as it wouldn't be as clear. Um, so I think of our air column inside the instrument that way. I mean, yes, we are moving some amount of air, but we don't want to add turbulence to the system. We don't want noise. We don't want static. We just want sort of the minimum, and then to send the signal through. But we want to preserve the medium that we're sending waves in, because remember, we're not like moving volumes of air so much as we're sending pressure waves into the instrument, having them reflected back, all while there is a leakage happening. So it's all kind of moving, but definitely need to rethink overblowing. I already talked about embouchure function a little bit just with the buzzing. Um, And that's one of the things I, I used to think when I was in high school and stuff, I thought, well, if I like the reason I can't play as high as I want to is because I'm not strong enough. I'm not strong enough to buzz like that frequency. Or the reason I get tired after I play a solo um, is because I'm not strong enough. So I felt like I had to get stronger and stronger, um, and it wasn't until Michael Mulcahy told me one time in the lesson, he was like playing these like really awesome high notes. And I was like, man, I don't know how you do that. And he's like, you're probably physically better suited to do that than I am because you're like a young man. I was like in my 20s, and I was like, whoa, like it just kind of hit me that it wasn't about strength. Um, it was about, you know, balance and finesse and just frequency. But um, yeah, so the whole strength, it's really more about doing less to get better. You got to, as you get better, it's getting out of the way. It's not adding more and more like strength and tension. It's about clearing things out so you can have the most pristine signal. And so you can influence just with a tiny little touch. You can get a nice high note. You can resonate the air column very easily. And high range, um, that's something that this whole standing wave idea has really helped me with because before it was like, oh, I got to work so hard. I really felt like I had to squeeze and push and pull and all this stuff. And really, when you're just visualizing that standing wave inside the instrument, it's just turning in from, one wave to more waves and more waves. So, but it's the same direction, it's the same air column. It's just got more frequency to it. Um, so it's not anything extraordinarily different from the fundamental, from like a low B flat. And that's helped me a lot to reduce tension in the high range. And loud playing, that's just a larger amplitude. Um, so just instead of, a lot of people like to huff and puff to play loud. They have to like feel like I'm playing loud. I'm gonna play loud, and so they're really going for it, like with the body tension. But it's the same air column with the same frequency. It's just that the displacement is greater. So there's a greater amplitude. And when you just sort of like watch those notes get louder without investing your body energy into it so much, then you can actually play very loud for a very long time without being tired. And you can play way louder than if you're overblowing and blocking and sort of trapping the air in your body, compressing air. And last one is this articulation, like that you'll tell a sixth grader, well, you should, articulate. You got to say ta before you start the note, or if it's legato, you can say da. Um, and okay, sure, that's like an easy way of getting someone to articulate, but I think the idea is that very quickly they will stop thinking that and just kind of figure it out and learn to play musically. Um, but somehow most of us, I really get the feeling that and most brass players are still doing, like, maybe they've got a couple extra in there, but they're still kind of thinking ta and da instead of um, imagining a sound, or imagining what does the blossom of that standing wave look like? What is it? Um, I find so many people, they go blind at the moment of articulation where it's like they don't even know what they sound like when they start because they're literally saying ta in their minds, or they're like ta play. And so they're completely unaware of really what's happening there because they're distracted by saying ta. So if I like to concept in order to sort of like retrain that out of myself and others, um, I like to just really focus on, you know, like I'll do a no articulation note, and then just kind of like be aware, like what's that transition from silence to tone, that ramp up, even like how tiny it is. What's that ramp up like? What does that standing wave look like? And then how do I want it to look like? How do I want it to sound? And really like asking for something very specific. And there's like an infinite number of ways to do this. So it really just comes down to style. But Oops. But yeah, I think there's a lot of room for growth here. I think the people who are the best at articulating are maybe the ones who would maybe even tell you that they're not aware that they're articulating because it's so minute that and they can't even feel it. Whereas the worst articulators, the clumsiest articulators are the ones who are like, I really articulate, they're like, ah, and basically that arbitrary tongue movement that they've learned is getting in the way of them actually starting the tone. Um, so it's sort of like an obstacle that they've created that now they have to play around. Whereas, yeah, if you're playing with you're just playing by expectation. Like I really want this color at the beginning of the note, and I'm really present at that moment, asking for it and watching it. Um, then and your body does it for you, and you're like, did I articulate? I don't know. I didn't really feel it. Um, So just kind of reframing articulation into like, what does it mean in terms of the air column? Not just like, did you say ta or did you say da? Connecting it to the air column, connecting it to the music, the sound, the visualization. Um, so yeah, as we move into playing by resonance, as you start thinking about this more and more, what really becomes apparent is that it's all about doing less, and you get better by getting out of the way. Um, a lot of the reasons that we do have trouble like playing through a solo or playing high notes is because we're compensating for um, missing the resonance or we're um, yeah, or because we are blocking air energy, um, that we're not fully harnessing the resonance power of the instrument, and so we're actually doing a lot of the work that the instrument's supposed to be doing for us. Um, so yeah, or yeah, and if you'll if you're playing with a group that plays that way, then you'll kind of get sucked into that as well. So there can be a group dynamic to that too. Um, yeah, everything is really about it's about doing less, getting out of the way. I spent way too much time trying to do extra things and trying to imagine. I mean, everyone has a sound concept, but at the end of the day, like my next point here is that um, I really feel like yeah, like that the best, without, music aside, that just purely a pure tone perspective, um, that resonance is the maximum of sound quality. So it's just the basic resonance is the best you can do, and then anything else you add to it is like subtracting from the quality of the sound. So your sound quality is resonance minus what you do. And doing could be like, I don't know, just getting in the way. Anything that's not directly related or necessary for resonating is making your sound quality worse. Now, obviously, you know, there are musical effects that come from maybe uh veiling the sound, or there's an infinite way of being musical with all the, you know, types of sounds you can make. But if you're just kind of like, if you're working with a young player who has a bad sound, it's they're usually they're doing a lot, they're resonating minus a lot of things that they're also doing, and just getting them out of the way and getting them to just get the air to resonate the air column. Then I mean, I've taught many young people, and I've gotten them to play on their first time playing the instrument. They play a pure, beautiful sound, boom, and I just ask them to just blow air through the instrument with no tone, and then I play a tone, and they just try to play a tone, and after a few times they figure it out, and it really works. They don't you don't have to have that sixth grade sound when you teach a new student. You don't have to here buzz the mouthpiece now do it on the trombone. It doesn't have to be that way. If you just encourage them to blow and then imagine a sound as you're blowing, then the instrument wants to play a note. I mean, if you tap, you tap your palm on the mouthpiece of a trombone while it's in the trombone, and it's going to make a B flat. So the trombone, the physics are already set up. It really wants to play a tone. You don't need strength. You don't need much coordination. Like, anybody could really do it. Um, yeah, and basically once you kind of are like really in tune with that standing wave and the resonance of the instrument, the air column, then you can you can sort of feel reflective point in the instrument where the wave energy is getting sent back. It's almost like when you're trying to put two magnets together, two positive magnets, you feel that like invisible ball. You can feel that with your air as you sort of exhale through the instrument, and especially when you're playing a tone, you'll get that feeling. And so you can kind of like balance your whole playing on that, and just watch it and hear it do what you want it to do, because you're perfectly in balance. You're right on top of it, and it just does what you want it to do. Um, and that for me is, I think, probably what Song and Wind was. That's what Arnold Jacob was talking about. Jacobs was talking about when he was talking about Song and Wind. And I tried to get into Song and Wind like so long ago, and I just could never really get. I kind of thought, well, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to work for me. Or, um, but I think this is a kind of a nicer way, like, of thinking about it. That literally, like, the wind is making the sound, the wind. I mean the air column. But just by being balanced on that, you can influence it in ways that are really nuanced and musical. Um, yeah, so that's basically the physics of brass instruments, and my take on what those mean for, how we should proceed in the face of problems that arise in our practicing, like high range endurance, loud playing, soft playing, articulation, basically everything we do. I think if we revise our lens a little bit, and really kind of focus on, like, okay, what's really happening here? Oh yeah, like, okay, so I shouldn't be buzzing, or, all this stuff. That can be a really good place to start. It is really hard to make changes. Like, let's say you do want to improve your sound quality, and you do want to start like resonating more. Your body's, if you're in slide school, you've probably spent a lot of time practicing already. So you already have a long history of doing something, and changes are going to be kind of slow coming. One of the tools that I like to use, these like boba straws, and you can use these just to, first of all, like, make sure that you're not holding air back. You're not here going kind of compressing or anything there. It's just that you can be in a state of rest, and then very simply move air through, so that you can start to become minimalist with your playing. You can start doing less. Like, maybe you play trombone like this, and then, like, you go to the straw. You're like, oh, I can just practice easily. Calm it down, and maybe do that for 5-10 minutes. After you've done that for 5 or 10 minutes, go to your trombone, just try to play B flat, or, maybe do one of these, a B flat, one of these, a B flat, and just see if you can use that sensation of, like, okay, this is free flowing air, this is no extra energy air, and I'm gonna now try to, copy that on the instrument. You can block it up, and it becomes a resonating straw. You can kind of find where it becomes resonant. You can start not resonating. Yeah, just so that's kind of teaching you almost a new skill. It's like, oh, if you're used to kind of buzzing, you're used to kind of blocking and holding and controlling, then this kind of helps you get the energy past the lips and start learning, okay, how am I actually getting that toot? How am I resonating? And then you can use it with the visualizer. go from here, go on the trombone. Boom, boom. Yeah. So those are some of the tools if you're trying to move more in that direction. Um, that's a good practice tool. Yeah. So hope you guys have enjoyed this talk, and I appreciate you listening.